Hey everybody, this is Mumbling Nick. Hopefully, some of you watched the Dabbling in Politics political roundtable we had on Saturday, hosted on JJ Dabble's channel. Um, he was great. He helped produce it and put it together. Christian Blatt was there from WATB. We had Helga and Lisa from Trainwreck. We had the old douche of the Dabbleverse and myself. And it was a good time had by all. We, just one or two heated moments, but they weren't even that bad. So it was really good. We're going to be doing a part two. Um, but it's tough watching yourself. Like most people, I have trouble watching myself. So I haven't rewatched the whole thing yet. But I was going through some of it, skimming through, because there was a couple parts of my own performance I thought was a little rocky, and I kind of wanted to touch on two things in particular. That one of them I kind of want to finish what I was talking about, and the other one I kind of want to re-say what I was talking about. So the first one has to do with Kamala Harris. There was a part during the roundtable where I said I think Trump supporters are going to be pleasantly surprised when they get to the debate, because she's not a good debater. She's pretty good, when her team gives her something ahead of time to read. Like, I remember the first Democratic debate in 2020 was by far the best she did. They had a planned attack against Biden. They went after it. They even had like T-shirts and everything pre-made. And she got out to this nice little burst at the beginning. And then she died out, and she didn't even make it to the first primary in Iowa. And a huge reason why is because Tulsi Gabbard attacked her in the following debate, I believe, and she had no answer. And it's something she should have been prepared for. So during our roundtable, I was trying to get to that, and I just brought up how, it was how I almost said Tulsi, how Kamala, struggles during these debates. And then I jumped and started talking about Tulsi because I wanted to, bring up what Tulsi did. And I kind of went on too long. And I think, and Christian kind of stopped and moved it along, rightfully so, because I think he thought sorry, a car's going by. I think he thought, that I got off topic. I forgot what I was talking about, but I took the long way to get there. And I was talking about how I used to really like Tulsi. She was vice chairwoman of the DNC, and she saw all the corruption going on under Debbie Wasserman Schultz, when Hillary was running. And she actually resigned from that, prestigious post to back Bernie Sanders in 2016, when she looked like a progressive like me. And then in 2020, she ran, and I was happy. I was still rooting for Bernie over her, but I was happy. And she decimated, Kamala in that debate, which I will get to in a minute. And finally, when she dropped out, she had the choice of either, not supporting anybody, supporting Bernie again, or supporting Biden. And she chose to support Biden this time. It made no sense. She had resigned from the DNC because of all the corruption going on with the corporate Democrats. So then she supports the corporate Democrat. And now, she's just gone full right wing. So I know the conservatives like her, but it shows me when you go from progressive to corporate to right wing, you're just an opportunist. So it's unfortunate. Tulsi, she's going to burn the conservatives at some point too. She's just looking out for herself. Anyway, but in that second debate, she smoked Kamala because she brought up, or Kamala, I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. They keep changing it. But we'll just say Harris. She smoked Harris because she brought up something that, she did when she was in California, when she was the attorney general of California. And she kept prisoners in there longer than in their terms than they were supposed to. They get the cheap labor. And she arrested so many, people of color over marijuana and stuff like that, and then laughed about smoking marijuana herself. So that's what Tulsi got her on, and Harris had no rebuttal, even though she should have known this attack was coming. But I want to bring up something else about Harris that didn't get brought up in that debate. We'll let this car go by. I should have shut the windows before I started this, and now I'm too lazy to get up and do it. So anyway, there's something else in Harris's history when she was Attorney General that I think is very interesting because it involves Steve Mnuchin, who was Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary. So some of you remember the big housing crisis when the housing market collapsed, 2012-ish. I think. I can't remember, but you know what I mean. When the housing market crashed, here comes a truck. Jesus. Just so everyone knows, I left the windows open because it is 2 a.m. where I am, and I did not expect traffic to even be going by. But all these loud vehicles keep going by. Anyway, sorry. So the first bank, or one of the first banks to go down during the housing market crash, was a bank in California called One West Bank. And the government, tried to step in, and what ended up happening is some rich people got together to take over the bank. Now, there was multiple investors because they could not, if at least one person owned 25% or more than 25%, there'd be all these extra regulations. And of course, they didn't want that. So they all owned less than that, but it was led by Steve Mnuchin. I won't name the other names. Unfortunately, I worked for one of the other guys that was in there, and that's disappointing. But basically, they took over this bank, and they had all these housing loans that were, in trouble. Now, normally, what a bank wants to do is they want to work. They don't want to foreclose. They want to work to get these loans paid. That's not what Steve Mnuchin and his people, they actually worked to foreclose on all these homes, and I'll tell you why. So they didn't pay for any of these loans, but the government were willing to back up to 90% of the losses. If these things were defaulting, they would pay up to 90% to them, And so they didn't they weren't losing money on the loans because they didn't buy the loans, but they were going to, they call this privatizing the gains, socializing the losses. They threw in money of their own so they could use their money to invest in things like fracking and even Hollywood movies. But the loans themselves, they did not pay for. So they didn't care if they were lost, especially since the government was going to pay them if they defaulted. Now, the government was only going to pay if they had, the stipulation was Mnuchin and these guys had to work with the families. They had to try to get the money. It was supposed to be a last resort for the government to pay, like a stopgap. But of course, it's not what they did. They did something they call like robo-signing, where they had signing all these foreclosure notices, and some, it was corruption, some were illegal. There's the most famous one was this elderly woman was kicked out for owing less than 30 cents because of a check writing issue. Forget the exact amount, but she accidentally flipped the change on the check when she wrote. Suppose her mortgage was $1,500.82. She wrote $1,500.28. And she lost her home. All these people lost their homes, and it was super corrupt things going on. So Kamala, being the Attorney General at the time, started a mortgage fraud strike force, task force, whatever you want to call it. They looked into the bank. They found total corruption, total. Later on, there ended up being this other woman. I wish I could remember her name, but they were screwing her out of her house. She kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and she actually got like a reward for being a whistleblower because Mnuchin and they were screwing the government out of money by doing this stuff illegally, and they ended up recouping like $89 million, and she got a percentage of that. But anyway, Kamala's team was just like, yeah, we got to go after this guy. The corruption is like nothing I've ever seen. And Kamala buried it. She did not go after Steve Mnuchin and the rest of the fraudsters. Big reason could be because Steve gave her a legalized bribe. I'm not 100% positive, but I'm like 99%. That year he gave to all Republicans except for one Democrat, and it was Kamala Harris, and she buried it and did not go after him. And then he eventually became Treasury Secretary under Trump. So we have Trump and Harris running against each other right now. And there is a link that Trump's former Treasury Secretary committed incredible fraud during the housing market. Harris was the one that could take him down, and she did not because he bribed her. Like I said, this is one party. This isn't two parties, the Democrat and Republicans. It's one big corporate party. It's an oligarchy. It's all the rich coming together. So that's the point I kind of wanted to get to, but I got stuck on talking about Tulsi, and then we moved on to other things. So I just wanted to specify that. Now, another moment during the roundtable, there was a quick, heated thing between Douche and I. I think it was the second. This one was much quicker than the first time we had a little argument, but it was over Crystal Ball interviewing RFK Jr. I don't want to put words in Douche's mouth, but I believe he was saying that Crystal was not letting RFK Jr. talk and get his points across and kept interrupting. There was some of that, but that went both ways. And I said something like, Tulsi smoked him. Sorry, not Tulsi. Crystal smoked him. She killed him. And it was just something lame like that. I never went into detail. And it's not that she smoked him. It's that she exposed him. Because RFK Jr. was supposed to be this, outsider, this independent, this free thinker, I don't know, like both parties, he's above both parties, like I feel I am, but now he's back in the Republicans. But he acted like he was the same choice, that he was going to be different. He was going to go after all this corruption, and then if you listen to his answers, he's not, because the devil is in the details. I know one of the big focuses was on, we found out how pro-Israel he is. It was crazy how pro-Israel he was. I don't even need to go into that, because just that took up a big chunk of the interview. That's what everyone talked about. But yeah, he pretty much thinks Israel should be able to kill and murder with impunity. It doesn't matter. So, also found out he was on Epstein's plane, like a couple times, and I don't trust anyone that's been on Epstein's plane. And all this stuff came out before the bear head and all this stuff. Anyway, all this crazy stuff that's been coming out lately. RFK Jr. is known for going after Big Pharma. He's skeptical of vaccines, all vaccines, which I think we touched upon in our roundtable. But he also talked about all the money in Big Pharma and the corruption that goes with the money, which I 100% agree with. But then when Crystal asked him if he would not nationalize the pharmaceutical industry, he said no. She asked about a public option. He said, on pharma drugs, he said no. Well, you got to do those two things, at least one of them, to go after Big Pharma. So basically, he criticizes Big Pharma, saying we got to get the money out, got to get the prices down, but then he's not willing to do the things that are going to make that possible. She asked about healthcare, if he was back to universal single-payer healthcare, which is a huge thing that I back. He said no. Well, actually, he said yes, he thinks that's a good idea. If he was starting from scratch, that's what he would pick. But he thinks we're too far gone, so we can't do that. And that is pretty much the exact same answer that Barack Obama gave years and years ago. So this guy backs Israel, like all the corporate politicians. He isn't going to do anything about Big Pharma and their price gouging and their corruption, like all the other corporate politicians. And he's not going to do anything about healthcare, like all the corporate politicians, even giving the same answer that Barack Obama gave, one of the most corporate, Wall Street-owned presidents we have had in recent memory. Oh, and I think at one point, the other thing they were talking about the economy and this, and he thinks the free market is going to fix everything, which is what every corporate Republican has ever said. So he's your standard corporate politician. He takes a little from both parties and acts like he's different from both of them. So that's something I wanted to touch on, because I basically just gave some lame answer or thing saying that Crystal smoked him, and I gave no detail. He said she didn't smoke him. I'm even less interested in all the back and forth and the cutting each other off. I'm more interested in the answers he gave, and the answers he gave were terrible. And that's not even touching in on the vaccine stuff, because hold on, another vehicle is about to go by, which I'm sure will get picked up. Okay, there it goes. Sorry, guys. Next time I do this, window's closed. But yeah, not even getting into all the vaccine. And for those of us that have kids, I know Douche feels different about this, but a lot of us, we think vaccines are a good thing. And I'm not even talking about the COVID vaccine. I'm talking about vaccines in general. So that's pretty much all I had. I was thinking I'll touch on one last thing before I go. This did not come up in the debate. This is new, but I remember we were talking about this on Twitter leading up to the debate. Another vehicle. Hurry up. Okay. So I apologize. I should have just stopped this after the first car and shut the window, but I got to get to bed for work. Anyway, leading up to this, there was a little ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery for the 13 soldiers who died when we left Afghanistan. It's super sad. Obviously, heart goes out to any soldier that dies. I'm glad we left Afghanistan, so I'm less critical of this whole thing. More soldiers would have died if we stayed there. Leaving Afghanistan is probably the best thing Biden did. Trump can say what he wants, but he said he was going to get us out. He never did. And no matter when we left, whether then, 5 years from now, 10 years, it would have been a disaster, because the government we propped up there was not real. It was a house of cards. I'm not the only one to say that. As soon as we left, it was going to fall apart, and all the militant groups and all the terrorists were going to take over again. And that's what happened. And it's awful. But we all know Trump only went to this thing, for a publicity stunt. Like, he does everything. And I'm not even saying the Democrats are different. But it was like, he went there because this happened under Biden, and he's going to act like he cared. Now, political stunts like this are not allowed at Arlington National Cemetery. You're not allowed any partisan stuff like that. Any political ads, you're not allowed to tape or anything like that. So the Trump campaign was told ahead of time they cannot record anything for any political ads during this ceremony. They tried to do it anyway. A female, she's a soldier or whatever, she worked at the center, she tried stopping his people. Apparently she was pushed out of the way, and they did it anyway. They later smeared her, the Trump campaign, saying she was definitely going through some kind of mental episode, which is an awful thing to say. Hopefully this is the last car. But basically, they were told ahead of time, you can't film any ads here, any political, any campaign stuff. They showed up to do it. They tried to stop them. They pushed the woman. They filmed it anyway, and they released the ad. I don't know how any Trump supporter defends this. I'd love to hear from it. Someone wants to comment. This is gonna go on YouTube, Twitter, whatever. I'd love to hear someone try to defend that, or at least admit that was awful, and that everything he does like that is just for show. He doesn't care, and most politicians don't care. I'm not going to say that. I like to think they care a little bit about soldiers dying, and I'm sure the average one does. The average politician does, but they still abuse it. And Trump clearly exploited 13 soldiers' deaths, and it's awful. All right, I'll end it there. Hoping I can do a little more of these, a few more of these. We do have part 2 coming up of the Dabbling in Politics. There's going to be some more people added, so it should be fun. We're bringing some more serious things to the Dabbleverse. I can't say anything specifically now, but JJ and I have something else in the works. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. It's more on the serious note. But yeah, we're turning the Dabbleverse into our own little universe. It's just the people involved happen to be from the Dabbleverse, and we're going to talk about real issues. Obviously, you got all the comedians still doing the comedy stuff, and that's great. John's back. all that's awesome. That's not my expertise. That's not everyone's expertise. But as long as we each bring what we know, I think it can get pretty interesting. I mean, Dr. Steve's been here a while. Dr. Steve is funny, but he also brings a lot of medical information and advice, and we're all doing that in our own little way here. So I want to thank you guys. I've said this a million times. I probably shouldn't even say it, but I'm trying to get more steady things off the ground. My original idea was that I had this show I was calling People in Glass Houses, and I was going to try and explain political policy and situations by using the Dabbleverse as like examples, because I didn't think straight politics would work in the Dabbleverse. And I still don't know if it'll work, but I know there's high interest of politics in the Dabbleverse. People are always commenting in the chat politically, on Twitter. Me being the working class progressive, I am greatly outnumbered. This is MAGA country, clearly. A lot of Trumpers. The only reason I think I'm even accepted at all is because I also hate the Democrat Party, just like most of you do. And I try and be fair, and I know a lot of people hopefully pay attention to that. Anyway, but the other idea I had was talking straight politics, talking about the issues that people care about in the Dabbleverse. I was going to go through the Twitter, John's political show. John calls his political show Politics Plus. I figured I could call mine Politics Minus. And of course, the Politics Minus show, PMS. I think that's kind of funny. So that's probably what this is going to be called. They still may do the glass houses at some point, using Dabbleverse as metaphors for what's going on in the political world. But right now, especially for the rest of this year with the election coming, I'm going to try and do straight politics, and I'll really focus on things that people in the Dabbleverse care about. All right. So remember that Politics Minus show, PMS, Mumbling Nick. Thank you for joining in. Please like and subscribe and all the other dorky things that YouTubers have to say. Till next time, this is Mumbling Nick saying, I was going to say Gagia, but I got to come up with something else. We'll just go. Thank you all. Peace.